The move is over, and I wanted to keep things a little bit similar. That way it wasn't too much of a hard transition going from my apartment over to my new house, guys. But I'm all set up. I'm ready to go. Content creation is at an all-time high. So thank you so much for sticking around for the episodes of the Missed Retrospective, whether they were recorded prior to the move or now, where I have a little bit more time to kind of, just create content, because these podcasts have been really helpful in my knowledge as far as learning about old wrestling and just hearing stories from other people of how wrestling affected them, what they learned from it, or maybe just learning new things along the way. We are now 5 episodes in, and I hope that you guys have been enjoying it. And I promise you, videos are coming soon. I tried to do it for this one, but unfortunately the equipment did not work the way that I wanted to. But that's okay. It happens. It's content creation life, right? But without further ado, guys, this is my conversation with Chad Poutine. Say it right, because otherwise he's going to come haunt you in your dreams, as we talk about Bret Hart and Stone Cold Steve Austin in WrestleMania 13's no DQ submission match. Let's get to it. All right, so what am I calling you? Am I calling you Chad?
Just call me Chad.
Okay, cool.
Yeah, or you can call me Chad. I'm
Captain
Canada or
Captain
Canada or whatever you want.
There you go, Captain. I like Captain Canada, actually. I'm gonna go ahead and use that because today I'm actually going to have a very special thing going on here today, because I have never. Oh, actually, no, hold on. I thought about how I wanted to start this. So I have seen a Bret Hart match.
Yeah.
The very first, and maybe two. We'll say two.
Yeah.
Bret Hart matches that I've seen were at WrestleMania 26 with Bret Hart and Vince McMahon, and then later on when Bret Hart beat The Miz for the United States Championship on Raw.
Yeah.
Outside of that, I have absolutely no sense of what a Bret Hart match looks like until last night when I finally watched what we're going to be watching, or what we decided to talk about here today. Yeah. But before we continue with that, Chad Poutine, please tell the world who you are. That way they know a little bit about your experience, where you come from, what your experience is in professional wrestling. They can kind of get a glimpse of your expertise here.
No, totally, absolutely. I grew up watching professional wrestling. From the time I was a kid, it was huge. Attitude Era in 1992 is when I was born. So obviously, I was like peak wrestling before peak wrestling now, because wrestling's pretty peak at this point. I followed it. I didn't actually watch it for probably a solid 20 years, just because my actual vocation before I became a professional wrestler was being a professional hockey player. And so I literally dedicated every single second of my life, every single day for 20 years to that. And so I was just kind of a casual fan where I paid attention, and like the things that Edge was doing with Cena I knew about. Obviously The Rock and Hogan, I had seen that stuff. But I literally didn't watch an episode for almost 20 years. So
we're the reverse.
Yeah, exactly. You did the opposite that I did. And so, and I really watched it at a point where like the Attitude Era was like the biggest thing to ever exist. Like that's when wrestling just like took off to another level that, obviously brought it to where it is today. And that's why I fell in love with it, was just because it was very like entertainment driven, whereas like the 80s, it was like very hokey and like, fun, obviously, and everybody was larger than life. And then the Attitude Era was like real life guys doing real life things, and it was just on the edge, and it was just super entertaining. And that's why I love wrestling through and through, is just entertainment. That's what I like watching. And so, like I said, I've been pretty much watching it my entire life, and then been professional wrestling for almost 2 years now. And so got trained by Cody Rhodes at the Nightmare Factory with QT Marshall and Billy Gunn. And then I was up in Minneapolis with Ken Anderson, Mr. Kennedy, the one and only. And he trained me for 14 months. And then Booker T was gracious enough to have me come down to Reality Wrestling. I've been here for 6 months. And so I would say, honestly, for the exceptions of probably the Dudley Boys and Seth Rollins, I've probably gotten all of the knowledge from some of the best minds in coaching from wrestling to kind of put me where I'm at today in Reality Wrestling. So
that's quite the coaching tree, honestly. We kind of, break it down and just kind of put you exactly where everybody's at and everything. We hear a lot about the ID schools and, who they are with, you talked about Cody Rhodes, the Nightmare Factory, and, Seth Rollins and everything. So you pretty much hit every single one, like you said, except for like 2,
right?
Which is, that's pretty good training, if you ask me, because that's quite the, the tree and everything. So
exactly.
I probably couldn't have really put this together better, because there's a lot of people that I've talked to trying to get on the show and everything, like, oh, we're talking Bret Hart. Yeah. We're talking
Bret Hart. And I was like,
Yeah.
all right, cool. And you were the one that's like, I'm available right now. There's an opening. Let's talk Canada. Because you're probably one of the most proud Canadians. Like, look, you don't like shout it from the rooftops or, shout it from the mountaintops or whatever.
Yeah.
You're just like, Canada is here all the time. And so I was like, I think this would be kind of perfect to kind of have you as like the guy that, breaks the seal on Bret Hart for me, because I'm actually doing another episode pretty soon with Gaspar as well. And we're watching a Bret Hart match.
Oh, okay.
So it's like I'm doing one back to back for both instances and everything. So I just think it's kind of hilarious that now the floodgates have opened of everybody subjecting me to the good Bret Hart rather than like
that's peak Bret Hart. Obviously, is in the '90s and the early 2000s, and I was fortunate enough, like. For people that don't know, I grew up in Calgary, Alberta. Bret Hart, the entire family. My parents went to school with, what do they have, like 14 children?
Yeah.
I'm pretty sure my aunts and my uncles, my mom and my dad, all went to the same high school as one Hart for like 10 or 11 years. My mom was in the same grade as Owen Hart, and Bret Hart actually owns, for nobody that are hockey fans, especially down here, he owns a Western Hockey League team, which is a what we would consider to be semi-professional hockey. It's called Major Junior Hockey in Canada, and he owns the Calgary Hitmen. And he brought that team back in the 90s when he was peak Bret Hart. And me and my dad used to go to Hitman games all the time. Bret Hart used to sit in the box right behind us.
Nice.
And he used to like hang around with the fans and everything else. So I have like a million pictures with Bret Hart. Obviously, he wouldn't remember me because he's met a million people, but
you'd be surprised who people remember.
And I joke all the time. He was probably a lot less sour back then about Bill Goldberg than he is now. But it's a special connection just because, like I said, I grew up with him. He's obviously from the same place that I'm from. So I definitely, like you said, I got a lot of pride in it. And it's just like, I don't scream being Canadian from the rooftops, but I also tell people that, like, if you ever talk to me, it's not hard to tell.
Yeah, for sure. And, I'm glad that, this was the match that you pitched, because a lot of people have always told me, is like, you got to watch like all the classic WrestleMania matches. And this is one of them that's always been in that blind spot. I know the shot of, Stone Cold yelling with like the blood in his face and everything.
Yeah.
But seeing the progression to get to that point,
yes,
especially not even knowing the story beforehand, just kind of, going in and just seeing it blind, so to speak. I know the finish because that's like one of the classic matches that we always talk about as fans and everything. But to see it unfold and then to kind of read a little bit up about it after the match was over, I kind of got to see how the story came to be.
Right.
And it was just really cool to finally experience it, so to speak. And I texted Kevin immediately. He's probably like the person that I text immediately after every match that I'm watching. I'm like, dude, how have I missed this? How have I not seen this before? And the big note that I had just for talking to Kevin right afterwards was, I feel like the art of pro wrestling from like the 90s is kind of gone.
Right.
Like it doesn't feel, I know that every sport has to evolve, obviously. You can't compare the 90s athletes with the athletes from today.
No.
It's just evolved so much. But to see the evolution of professional wrestling from then to now, it's kind of cool, the fact that I can watch an old match and still have as much fun watching it, still get enthralled by the story when it's so much simpler. Like there was no like big moment of like the big dive or this big dive. Like it was just nope, just running right into the ring post or running right into like the barricade and stuff.
Right.
That was the big moment.
Yeah.
So I was like, this is kind of weird that I'm super into this when basically quote unquote nothing's happening.
Yeah, exactly.
So,
right. But you know how Booker T always says, right? Action is movement.
Yeah. Yeah. No, we get into Bookerisms. We very much get into Bookerisms in this show because he teaches us a lot, truly.
And he's got a lot of them too.
And it's also just really cool to see it in action, you know, and not no pun intended. It's really cool to just see it in action, see it unfold in the way that it does, because it's stuff that you hear from Booker. You're like, I don't get it. Like, what do you mean? Yeah. But then you watch something, you're like, oh, I get it now.
Right. Yeah.
And that's probably one of those matches that is going to be at the forefront of my brain, especially like we'll get into the double turn later and everything with everything that happened. But just seeing it in action, how, again, quote unquote, nothing happened.
Yep.
Yet everything happened in that match.
Exactly.
The one cool thing that I also do want to point out was the crowd. Yeah. I'm so used to the crowd just always getting involved. The crowd is always just chanting everything all the time. And they're doing the claps, like trying to get the people back into it and everything and whatnot. Yeah. That didn't happen. No. There was like maybe one chant towards the end. Yeah. And that was it.
Yeah. And that's when Austin got out of the ring, right? And obviously that's when the double turn started. But obviously, like, there was just noise incrementally because they couldn't figure out who they wanted to cheer and who they wanted to boo as the match kept going. And you're right, like the only chant breaks out at the very end when he's limping out of the ring and he's going to leave. They start chanting Austin, right? And other than that, there's nothing, which I think is very interesting because like nowadays you don't see that.
Yeah.
Right.
Again, it's just because the double turn, right? Have there been any other double turns that you were aware of that happened? Like I know one. And it was Ziggler and Del Rio, like, I think like 2013, 2014 or whatever.
Yeah, I would say the Bret Hart Stone Cold double turn at WrestleMania 13 is the most iconic, though, for multiple different reasons. Not just because it's a double turn, but like just the way that their paths. Because normally, if you have a double turn, like, you know, Del Rio and Ziggler did, like, yeah, their paths go the exact opposite way. But one guy normally goes way further than the other guy. It works for one guy and doesn't work for the other guy. Whereas, like, this worked for both of them the best it could have worked out for both of them, right? And I think that's what makes it so special, right? It wasn't just one guy got shot off into the stratosphere and the other guy was like, meh. It was just like stratosphere, in literally opposite directions.
That's really cool to think about too, because this was like right before the Attitude Era had, like, it hadn't even begun yet.
No.
Like Stone Cold hadn't become anybody quite yet to the level that he would end up becoming.
Exactly.
The Mr. McMahon character wasn't even a thing yet.
Nope.
We're still like maybe like a year or two off from the Attitude Era fully.
Not quite. I wouldn't say a year, but like because WrestleMania happens, and then that summer Bret turns into a real bad guy, and then that's when we start sliding into the Attitude Era as we start going to the end of the year, and that's when like I would say it actually picked up the pace, because then that's when Rocky started turning heel, and then that's kind of when everybody kind of shifted that way, and then by the end of the year it was in full swing, and then it was Attitude Era all the time. And I think that like I would personally say this might be a hot take for some people, and I could care less.
We love hot takes here.
The Attitude Era started WrestleMania 13 with Bret and Stone Cold, because if it's not for this, Bret Hart does not make Stone Cold Steve Austin. Steve Austin has said it out of his own mouth that Bret Hart made me. That was the beginning of the Attitude Era. That specific match right there, WrestleMania 13, those two guys, that's what started the Attitude Era, in my opinion.
That's actually very interesting too, because like what the moment that I always hear explained started the Attitude Era was the screw job, which I think it was like literally like 2 years off from this, because Bret Hart stuck around for a little bit longer after this, and like you said, became the bad guy and everything.
Yeah.
So to obviously, like in retrospect, you can always look back and be like, oh no, it was this moment.
Of course.
And funny enough too, that one of the recent episodes that I just did with Gustavo Mendoza, we talk about like, you know, the warming up of the event. Something wouldn't mean as much as it did unless you had this first chapter first.
Exactly.
So I guess that's what you were saying. Like this would be the precursor to the Attitude Era. But if you were to look back at it, then this would be what actually started the Attitude Era.
Exactly.
That's really interesting to think about too, because I mean, we can always keep going further back and always going further back and everything.
It's like an onion, just layers and layers and layers, and we can always find a reason, right?
And that's just what makes a great story overall. So let's talk about the match then. Let's go and get started then.
Yeah.
So one thing I didn't know about this match, and this is really cool too to think about, is we always talk about like the moments, right? We remember the moments. We don't remember all the little details and everything. Some people will. I have been a fan of this for a little bit over 20 years now. I'm going on 22 years now, and I never knew Ken Shamrock was a special guest referee for this match.
That is the one thing about this match that everybody forgets. Everyone.
I saw him.
Ken
and
Shamrock's in the middle of that match, and everybody just only remembers Bret Hart and Stone Cold. And Ken Shamrock was literally the reason why the match was set up the way that it was because he was the ref.
So how did he end up being the ref?
Well, that was actually a movie just came out not that long ago with Mark Kerr, obviously, where it's, you know, the start of UFC. And at the time, Ken Shamrock was the Ultimate Fighting Championship before, you know, what we have today. And he was just WWE was trying to get other, you know, influences inside the business that weren't just wrestling. And because he had just won that championship, they were like, it was a perfect opportunity. And Bret and Austin at that time, and people have always said it, like two of the best tacticians ever, which is funny because after that, Stone Cold was never a technical wrestler again. He fought all the time, but like back in WCW, and then when he started in WWE, like he was a tactician, right? And obviously Bret, people say all the time, that guy could wrestle with a broomstick, right? And so The fact that those two guys were the best two tacticians in the game at that point, arguably, and then for them to be in a no disqualification submission match when I don't think I'd ever seen Steve Austin do a submission to anybody in almost 2 years, because he did the ringmaster thing when he first started with Ted DiBiase, and he did do Ted DiBiase's submission for a while, but like he got away from that a long time before he was even in this match, right? And then Bret, really the only thing he ever did do was the sharpshooter, but like during a match he never did any submissions, right? And so but I think it was kind of just like a perfect story, and like Ken Shamrock, larger than life, like dude was massive, like he's just for that day and age, like dude looks like guys look like now, right? And that's saying something, because like all the science and everything, he was like one of the guys that looked like that before all the guys started looking like that, right?
So there's again, I know Ken Shamrock eventually had a WWE career, so this was before he even started doing anything WWE. So it was just a promotional thing from him coming over from the UFC.
Exactly. Yeah.
Okay, gotcha. So it would be kind of like akin to Mike Tyson coming over and just doing like a guest spot. Okay, cool.
Yeah.
They trusted him to be a special ref. Like that.
It's a big responsibility, obviously.
I mean, again, I've seen referees, like now they're part of the show and everything too, not in the sense of like their characters, but sometimes they can be, especially with Earl Hebner being a referee at this time and everything. But
exactly.
It's just that much responsibility for a guest spot is kind of insane, because if anything goes wrong, you're the one that has to say something. But again, I don't know how produced all the stuff was back then. Like, I don't know if they had radios, they had like time cues and everything. Because now everything is kind of, I'm not going to say overproduced, because, I don't believe in overproduced.
No, we can.
It's
it's fine. AI is apparently making all the calls now, so.
Allegedly. But, just having that much responsibility for a guest spot is kind of, especially in a match this big.
Yeah.
Like, that's kind of crazy. And again, I didn't know that he was a referee. I started the video and I was like, what the hell is Ken Shamrock doing here? What is happening right now? I also thought it was really cool, like just going off of the entrances. This is the moment where that classic, the glass shatter of like 316 and like it comes down and everything. Yeah. I didn't know it was from WrestleMania 13.
Yeah, that was so cool, honestly, because before that, like he hadn't done it. And so like that's where the glass shatter came from, and it's just like so iconic now, obviously, but it was like literally the first time he'd done it. So, and obviously the fans thought it was cool in place, right? And so definitely a special moment, because I don't think they did it ever again after that. It was just the one time, and they never did it again, probably because of the mess that it made.
Oh yeah, I mean they even highlighted it during Bret Hart's entrance, like look at the glass, and now let's look up at Bret Hart. I mean again, just it was WrestleMania, right?
Yeah,
everything had to be bigger, and that's just the way the WrestleMania has always been.
Exactly.
So you got to go above and beyond. So I mean, out of the gate, I like the matches that a lot of the commentators, when they tell the story, they're like, oh, this is personal, this is this. Yeah. They made it feel that way.
They did.
And then right out of the gate, before the bell even rings, like Stone Cold just went at him immediately, and they fight to the crowd and everything.
Yeah,
like starting a match hot. Whenever you say people hate each other, it's like, oh, look, color and double tie. I was like, bro, like that's not, you don't hate each other. You're here for a match, which I get it. There's like different levels to everything, but I like the fact that they right out of the gate, they're like, oh, they hate each other. Yeah, they're gonna start fighting into the crowd right out of the gate. Yeah, so they're just like, let's go out there. And then Ken Shamrock has to follow them. I was like, dude, Ken Shamrock, do you know what you're doing, sir?
Yeah, exactly. And he was doing more work than some of the security guards were, right?
Oh,
and so just because obviously he's such a big dude, but. No, and I mean, I think that's like something that kind of gets lost, but like is the beautiful thing about really good stories is like, if they just would have locked up, like people would have been like, these guys hate each other. Like that doesn't make any sense. Like I know that the guys that I wrestle, if I don't like them, you're getting a punch in the mouth. Like I don't want to wrestle you. I just want to knock your teeth down your throat. Right. And so, and him and Steve just like going at it like that. And I think like, that was when Steve really did come into his own, in the sense of like all he started doing after that was just punching and kicking and giving people stunners. Like that's literally all he did. Right. And so, and I think it was just a good way to start it, because the magnitude of how it was going to end, you wouldn't have thought, if you didn't know anything about wrestling, that that's how it was going to end. Right. Like, oh, they're just going to fight until somebody, doesn't move anymore. Right. You don't think it's going to be a submission, somebody passes out. Right. And so like, that's a beautiful thing in a, 20 some odd minute match, where you go from that all the way to the very end, where you got a guy unconscious, not tapping out, but, being in a submission. Right. And just the way they told that story. Right. And so And obviously the fans love it. Like, that's their favorite part. Everybody knows that, like, when they have big shows, it's like, who's coming into the stands tonight? Oh, yay. Right? And they're just like, no, we're just going to go right now.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah. And then I think that was really cool, too, that you talked about the way they tell the story, right? There was many ways that they could have told a story. And we get, that's the thing about wrestling, that where you have a story, a very basic story, David versus Goliath, good guy versus good guy, like who's better, etc. There's different ways to tell the very same story.
Yeah.
Was this like the first time that they had told a story like this, where it's like good guy, bad guy, but now we're gonna cross wires and be like, oh, now you're the bad guy, you're the good guy?
Yeah. From the way that they had done it, the biggest two guys in a double turn. Like, I'm sure we can find it in other promotions before that and everything going on, but like at the pinnacle of what was occurring in these two guys, how notable they were, no double turn like it, right? Because obviously Bret was just huge, right? Just massive. And obviously Stone Cold was just kind of coming into his own finally. And, you know, again, another hot take, like I tell people all the time, that like, if it wasn't for Bret Hart, Shawn Michaels wouldn't be who he was, and Stone Cold Steve Austin wouldn't be who he was, because Bret Hart had to come first to make those guys into the guys that they were, right? Which is funny. That's why I say the Attitude Era started there with Bret Hart, because keep in mind, before that, who did Bret Hart fight? Shawn Michaels, right? Shawn Michaels, Stone Cold Steve Austin, and obviously we don't need to talk about The Rock in this episode, but obviously those are the three top guys in the Attitude Era, and Bret Hart made two of them.
Yeah.
Right?
And they mentioned in commentary that the previous year at WrestleMania, Bret Hart and Shawn Michaels had fought.
Yeah.
Was that the Iron Man match?
Yes.
Okay, gotcha.
Yeah.
I still haven't seen that one. It's on the list, so we're gonna get to it eventually.
Yeah.
Because I don't want to do like 5 Bret Hart matches in a row. Because then I'm like, okay, I went from 0 to now having 5.
Yeah.
And I think I'm doing 3 Bret Hart episodes in a row, which I'm like,
It's just like really good ice cream. It's like you can't stop.
Yeah, and again, it's super simple. Like
Yes.
like I said at the beginning, it's a super simple story. They didn't do like any crazy dives.
Yeah.
The craziest dive that somebody took was for like dropping an elbow across the side of the head or something.
Yeah, which
like
was
that.
a vintage Bret Hart move
Yeah.
anyways. He did that all the time, right?
Yeah, and it's nothing like. And again, I'm not disparaging anybody from today's era. Like,
No, of course not.
It's athletic. It's crazy. As long as you're doing it safe, pop
Right.
off, do your thing. If you're telling a story, again, pop off, do your thing. And that's rule number 1. Keep everybody safe. If you're being safe,
Right.
do the craziest crap that you want. I don't
Exactly.
care.
Yeah.
But again, it's just super simple. It's just diving with the dropping the elbow or something, and
Right.
they're just wrestling, right?
Yes.
And it felt like a very quick 20 minutes before the actual match end happened.
Yeah.
But it was just super basic. Like,
Yeah.
I can't get over the fact that I got invested in such a super basic match with, again, nothing happening, even though everything happened at the same time.
Exactly, right. And obviously you can be nice about it, but Chad's not going to be for real right now in this era. There's way too much going on. Guys are trying to do 7,000 different things because we want to see all the athletic things. I don't care what anybody says. The reason why people watch TV and the reason why 20,000 people want to watch a wrestling match isn't because of wrestling. They want to see it because of a story. Chad Poutine is a professional wrestler because I love stories, right? Every single time, the things that I remember in wrestling were because of the story, not because of the wrestling moves that I saw and the way that they did them, and they did triple backflips and swantons and all these. None of that. Right?
Unless that is the spot.
If that's the spot, then
like
that's
Jeff
fine.
Hardy hopping off of the ladder and stuff like that. People remember
obviously,
that. Yeah,
yes,
yeah.
obviously, first TLC match, also legendary. I'm sure somebody will do that match at some point. But, honestly, like, that's the beauty of old school wrestling like that, is that, like, you had every single person on their feet. And what did they do? They literally just beat each other up for 25 minutes, right? I think I counted 1 suplex, his middle rope elbow thing.
Yeah.
And I think other than that, all they did was beat each other up, kick each other. And then there was a bell at the end. And obviously Steve Austin went into the barricade and cut his head open. And so but the reason why that works is because there's a story there. That's why people are invested, right? We don't have to name promotions, but I know there are promotions these days. They just want to do all the flippy dippies and all the sweet tricks. And there's a reason why there's a specific type of person that watches that. And then there's a reason why there are people who watch wrestling, like reality wrestling, like WWE, things like that, because it's story-driven material. And basic people that miss wrestling and don't see it, they watch it, And that's how they get invested. They don't get invested because they have no idea what wrestling is. You know what I mean? They don't know a wrist lock from a headlock. They have no idea, right? But if you give them a story, that's what makes it make sense, right? And a perfect example of that is I was out of it for 20 years. COVID hits. I see John Cena's retirement on TV, and I go, no offense to John, I never liked him. I wasn't into rap music when I was a kid. I was out. Like, I was just like, I'm good. So I didn't watch. Right? And so I stopped watching wrestling. And I was like, but those retirement ceremonies, I remember them being so good. And I was like, you know what? I need to watch this. Watched it one time. Bray Wyatt does his thing with him. Obviously, they go all the way to WrestleMania. That just, obviously that WrestleMania was so different because everything was produced in a way that had never been produced before because of COVID. But, like, that hooked me. And, like, again, I didn't like John, but like I was like, this is good television. And then I literally watched every single week, and I still to this day I haven't missed an episode literally since that day. Not because I was excited to watch John Cena wrestle, right? It was because him and Bray Wyatt, this is going to be a beautiful story because I know what Bray Wyatt's about and I know what John's about. And if there's one thing they can do, is tell a story, right? And so I think that's a perfect example of it. Like, that's what drew me in. And when I was a kid, Attitude Era, that's what it was about. Stories, right?
So that's the Firefly Funhouse match that you're talking about, right? I mean, we're talking hot takes, right? I still think to this day that's one of the greatest matches that's ever happened in WrestleMania.
Oh, that is a hot take. That is a hot take.
And it was divisive at first because people didn't know what to think of it and everything. Yeah. But I remember witnessing it live as it was happening. Yeah. And Titus O'Neil at the end of that was all of us. Just like, what did we just watch?
Yeah, what did we just watch?
It was insane. Right. And looking back at it now, obviously what we know about Bray Wyatt and how he produced all that stuff and then how involved John Cena was in the creative process and everything. Right. I really hope that a majority of that is seen kind of like I mean, John Cena was winding down at that time, and obviously now he's on his retirement tour. Yeah. But like that is like the perfect encompassing of like what a twisted way to tell his story of his career and everything. Yeah. And again, it wasn't even a match. It was just, let's tell your story in a twisted way. Yeah. The only person that could do that was Bray Wyatt.
Absolutely.
And again, that was a WrestleMania, which is the same thing here for Stone Cold and Bret Hart. There's only one way to be able to tell this story, and it's to have it at WrestleMania. Yeah. And the cool thing about those two matches is that Booker T always tells us too, this in the back and everything, if you're going to have a WrestleMania match, have it at WrestleMania. Yeah. Don't have it here.
Don't have it here.
Because this is not the place. No. You can have your WrestleMania match at WrestleMania. Exactly. And people always want like, the 5-star bangers and everything like that, but everything needs a building block. Right. The building block for this was, again, after I did a little bit of research after this, I didn't know that this was the year that Stone Cold won the Royal Rumble. Yep. And it didn't even matter because he didn't have the match at WrestleMania. Exactly. And again, when I started watching wrestling in 2004, I had never heard of the championship match being given up because it just never talked about it. It didn't matter. Yeah. I didn't know that it had happened before. So I was like, it was 7 years before I started watching that it started. I was like, so this has happened. There's precedent, right? Yeah, exactly. When you have precedent, it's a little bit easier to excuse things. Yeah. But obviously, there's so many people out there in the internet wrestling community that just talk about like all this bullshit on Twitter and stuff. Right. And it's like, this literally happened not that long ago. And now I'm thinking about it. It's like, what was the first time that I saw a Royal Rumble opportunity go to waste, so to speak? Because storyline called for it, right? Yeah, storyline called for it. And then the main event for for this WrestleMania was Undertaker and Psycho Sid. Yeah, right. And I haven't seen that match either. But I'm like, this should probably main event it. This could have been the title match. No, it for sure could have, right? And that's the thing is this, like, obviously that's old school wrestling, right? Like, and obviously no shade to Mark Calloway, like like the legend, like, I know they call Shawn Michaels Mr. WrestleMania, and I was thinking about this. Undertaker is WrestleMania. Yeah. Shawn Michaels might be Mr. WrestleMania, but Undertaker is WrestleMania. So I get that he's in the main event, and obviously old school is like those guys are both just a couple of behemoths, right? Completely different behemoths in the sense that Undertaker was insanely athletic, right? And Psycho Sid was just insanely strong. But like,
I do believe it's kind of one of those things that Steve and Bret go to the back, and it's just like,
follow that.
go follow that. Right? What we just did, you can go follow that. We'll see how you do.
I think those are like, just hearing stories about wrestlers. I think that's one of my favorite parts whenever they're like, we're the curtain jerkers.
Yeah.
But it's like, follow that. And it's like, holy shit. Like,
yeah, exactly.
That's setting a statement. That's one of my favorite things being back here for like Platinum.
Yeah.
Whenever the first match happens, since I get to be in the back for Platinum.
Yeah.
I just see the first match happen, and then I see people that are like, hey, follow that. I was like, fuck, now we're going. All right, cool. Especially when we have a really, really good show from like top to bottom. Yeah. Like, it's just nonstop. Like Summer of Champions this year
was
sensational.
Absolutely.
And I'm pretty sure that was like the mentality of everybody. Like, okay, I'm the first one up. Cool, follow that. The next one up. All right, follow that. And then the next one up. All right, follow that.
Right.
Because we started this year with the cage match. That was the first match that we recorded.
It was,
AJ Francis and Chandler Hopkins.
Yep.
And then I'm just like, obviously for us on Glory, I'm just like, bro, how are we gonna keep going higher? Like, what's happening?
Right.
And
especially
then
when,
follow.
he flies off the top of the cage like that, and dude's got no fear. But that was nuts, right? And but it's the thing, like, we're all athletes, we all want to compete.
It's a competitive sport, and we're in story, we're competing against each other, but in reality, we're doing it for the entertainment of the fans, right?
Exactly.
But we also want to be competitive with each other, and like, hey, I am the most entertaining guy here today. Yes. Follow that. Like, be better than me. Mm-hmm. And it's not for us. I mean, in some facet, it is for us, but it's also for the fans that, paid a ticket to see us here and everything.
Exactly.
So, to, again, kind of encompass that back to this match at WrestleMania 13, I can't even imagine how Undertaker and Psycho Sid felt after this match, just being like, fuck, we got to follow that. All right.
What the hell?
Did they even watch the match? Because, obviously everybody has their own rituals that they got to follow like, before the match goes out there.
I've never heard anything about that. And I know there's so many stories about somewhere, so I'm sure somebody could find it if there was an interview that Undertaker did or Psycho Sid did. But, like, honestly, sometimes it could be, especially in an event like that, could be detrimental to you, right? Because, like, especially the mentality, and obviously I played professional hockey, so like I understand what it's to be at the top of a profession, and like sometimes staying in your own box is the best thing to do before you go out on the ice, because like you don't have to worry about anything else, right? And I think wrestling's the exact same way, because if you don't stay in your own little box and then you look out there and you see what they do and they go, oh no, and this, that, all these other things, then it just gets inside your own head, and then you're just like, I gotta change all these things, when really just like go out there. And the thing that I love about wrestling, which is why I'm good at it, just like I was at hockey, is I know what my role is, and I just need to go out there and do that. Mm-hmm. Right? Doesn't need, like you said, doesn't always need to be a 5-star banger, right? As long as the fans are booing, yelling, or cheering,
making noise,
literally noise is what matters, right? And so that's the biggest thing there, right? Is that you just got to think about, like, if I just stay in my own box and they didn't watch it, and if they did, I mean, good for them, because I know it was still a good match. But like, how do you follow that? I mean, nobody could, because like, top 50 matches of all time. What was that, number 2?
Yeah.
Right? Because number 1 is Undertaker, Shawn Michaels at WrestleMania 25.
I was there. It was awesome. That was my first WrestleMania. This is actually the second time we've talked about that here on the podcast, that I was there. But something that you mentioned earlier that I have a note on it here, and I want to make sure that we go back to it.
Totally.
When Stone Cold ran into the not the post, it was the guardrail on the side, and he got busted open. Was that hard way, or did he blade like whenever the camera was off?
Yeah, and that's the thing that I tried to pick up on, right? Now, being inside of wrestling, I understand how these things work, and I tried to figure it out, but like the way that it looks, because of how he's facing the fans, I'm pretty sure he just slapped his face off the rail, because the reality of it is that unless you don't do that, the 3 fans that are sitting in front of you are about to see what you're going to do. And there's no other camera angle around him other than that one. So it's really hard to tell. The way that he goes in, though, and I'm sure there's an interview that's been done on it, so I'm sure Steve has talked about it, or maybe he hasn't, but like, that to me, and they've talked about how sometimes guys do it the hard way. Steve seems like a guy that does it the hard way sometimes. He just does, right? And so I wouldn't have been surprised if he was just like, hey man, throw me head first and I'll just bonk my head off of it and make it happen, right? Because the first thing I did is, after he comes away from the rail, I looked at his wrists to see like where could he have put it, and it's just like not really a lot of room for that. And for the fans, especially, like, we talk about all the time, when we get that close everything's got to be real.
Yeah.
Because we don't need them to know any other difference. There, I'm pretty sure that he just took that railing to the face. You know, and obviously, like, on the forehead like that, it also doesn't take very much.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? That's a quick little bonk, and then...
That's just insane, though, because he was gushing.
Oh, absolutely. 100%. I
think the first person that I saw blade that was gushing like that was obviously Eddie Guerrero against JBL.
Yeah.
And I was like, that's insane. And obviously now that I know what I know about, you know, the art of professional wrestling and everything,
right,
that is not something that you can just like easily maneuver around and then just like, oh, like a blade job, you can see when it's a blade job because it's like a straight line.
Yeah, straight line.
You start bleeding and everything. But the way that Eddie was bleeding was fucking gushing, dude. So like looking at this one, I was trying to look at his cut and everything. I was like, I think it was hard way because he was gushing. I was like, yikes, dude. Like we talk about this a lot too, like, you know, for the love of the game and stuff. And you know, you do what you got to do for the entertainment of the fans and whatnot. But would you, if it was up to you, you were at WrestleMania, you're having like, you know, one of the biggest matches at WrestleMania, would you do something like that in today's day and age?
100%. Zero discussion. Like, honestly, that's the thing, as a hockey player, I always did everything the hard way. Everything about my game was the things that nobody else is willing to do. Block shots, win faceoffs, kill penalties, do all the things that like don't get spotlight, and they're the hardest jobs to do. Go into the corners, you know, cut across the middle of the ice, things like that. Like, not everybody does those things. And so I'm the type of wrestler that, like, for sure, if that was the name of the game, I'd take that post head first, right? Because at the end of the day, now he's immortalized for literally the rest of his life, right? And obviously everybody knows that Steve Austin is still the most popular merchandise selling wrestler
still
in
outsells
WWE
people today,
which is crazy. And so if that's the case, 100% of the time.
That's
hard way 100% of the time.
It's always hard for me to, and again, I'm not trying to deter anybody from doing anything. It's always hard for me to celebrate stuff like that, just because I've seen, like, you know, the way that people can live their lives after like horrific incidents or anything like that. And even like the most simplest thing, I was listening to the Natty episode with Chris Van Vliet earlier that he released earlier today. Yeah. And they talk about, you know, it was just a muscle buster from Samoa Joe to TJ Wilson. And I was like, that ended his career. Like, that's crazy. And then we see stuff like, you know, Eddie Guerrero, or we see stuff like Stone Cold, like, just gushing. And I'm like, think about your health. But I mean, the only way that I can, like, in my brain, like, rationalize it is like, it was the 90s. Yes. We knew a lot less about what we do now about CTE and just you know, the health stuff in general. Yep. Because medicine just evolves so fast.
True story.
And I'm just like, okay, in my brain, I'm like, separate it from the time frame. Because if it was today, I'd be like, nah, dog. Like, absolutely not. I am apprehensive on the day that somebody asked me to watch like the death match that they did for Lucha Underground, because that's the one match I've skipped. Okay. Or the two matches that I've skipped. Yeah. I haven't watched Hangman and Swerve. Yeah. Because I haven't.
I'm not trying to watch that either.
I love Hangman. He's my favorite AEW wrestler. I literally have a sticker of him on my water bottle and everything. Right. But that's the one match that I skipped. I'm like, I'm good. But I'm weary for the day that people are like, let's watch death matches. It's like, that's the premise of the show. So I'm just like, I'll do it because, you know, I want to learn, obviously, because that it's like the ice cream analogy, right? Every style of wrestling has a different flavor of ice cream and all that stuff.
Exactly.
And I want to learn as much as I can. Yeah. Because you never know when I'll be able to learn something about, you know, just in general. Exactly. Eventually, I'm going to talk about Mick Foley, and, you know, that's the hardcore guy. I saw the hardcore match that he and Edge had at WrestleMania, and I thought that was incredible, even though it was kind of crazy. Yeah. And that's, again, that's the extent of
story driven still, though.
Yeah.
Don't forget, absolutely. Story driven.
Absolutely. If it didn't have a story, I probably would be like, I don't know. And I'm not trying to yuck anybody's yum at all. Of course. Absolutely. Because everybody has their own thing and whatnot. Yeah. But I like that kind of stuff. I'm just like, because I think about the health of the competitors, right?
Of course, yeah.
The first thing I do whenever I see somebody gets injured here, I message them the next day, like, hey, are you okay? How are you doing? You just kind of make sure that they're okay. They're like, I'm good. I'm like, cool. My Warriors are gone. Yeah. Let's keep celebrating your career, because, you know, it's just scary for me to see somebody get hurt. Yeah. So just to see somebody take stuff the hard way, I'm just like, I'm scared.
Yeah. And I don't have as much empathy myself, obviously, because everybody knows what I do on a daily basis. But as a hockey player too, like, that's the thing is, like, they don't care about me. I'm not going to care about them, because at the end of the day, if something happened to me, I know they wouldn't be looking at me that way. And so, like, but obviously when serious things do happen. Obviously, like, you know, we talked about that TLC match and he jumps off the top of the ladder. Like, yeah, you're like, man, is that good for your health? Right? You talk about Mick Foley going off the top of the cage with Undertaker, right? Like, is that good for your health?
Yep.
I'm not really sure, right? And there are specific moments where I've kind of thought that, but I know in this match specifically, that wasn't how I felt about it. It was just like, in a way, it was kind of innocent too, because the camera angle wasn't the best. So when he shot him off into the rail, it was just kind of like, because he had to trip over everybody to get there.
Yeah.
Right? And so it wasn't like had it been more impactful, like had he slammed into the rail, I think it would have made me feel different. Because he just kind of like stumbled into it, because there were like 3 officials sitting right there, and the one guy tried to get out of the way, and he like tipped out of his chair, and then he just kind of like bonked his head off the railing. And so I think that if he would have sent him harder, I think I would have been like, man, that probably hurt a lot. You know, but like at the end of the day, like you said, didn't know nearly as much back then as we do now, right? So like, guys are obviously not doing that way. I'll raise my hand though, because I'll still do it. I mean, I played hockey that way, so it's fine. I don't got a lot of brain cells left anyways. So
I mean, in hockey, they just literally throw down. Like anytime there's like gloves off. All right, let's go.
Yeah, and everybody knows Chad Poutine, same thing. All I do is throw it down. That's it.
So the one thing that I will give Stone Cold credit for, I mean, obviously he has a legendary career, was that after he started bleeding, his selling was different too.
Yes.
And that's something that I am also going to shout out Gunther for.
Yeah.
Because he did the same thing with CM Punk at SummerSlam.
Yeah.
And funny enough, I know Punk is a humongous Bret Hart guy.
Yeah.
So I kind of got that same feeling, like, you know, just watching this match and thinking about Punk and Gunther from SummerSlam.
Right.
As soon as Stone Cold got busted open, he was like stumbling, and whenever he took a punch, his legs were kind of like wobbly and everything. That, again, we talk about the art of professional wrestling, like it's different then than it is now.
Exactly.
It really felt like a fight, and he had found Bret Hart had found a weakness.
Right.
He had found is like, oh, you're bleeding now. You're a lot more susceptible to, you know, other things. The way that, you know, Stone Cold started selling after that, I was like, okay, you're actually getting fucked up.
Yeah.
Like, and that's what you expect in a fight. Like if you watch the UFC, if somebody starts getting busted up and they start getting caught, they start getting wobbly legs, and they're like they can't block anymore. They can't do specific things anymore because they're if they do start coming back, it's either adrenaline or because you got your bearings back, but you don't know what it is. So you still have to be careful. And again, we got to make it look like a real fight. We talk about that a lot on this podcast. You know, you want to make it look like a real fight.
Right.
So the fact that, you know, Stone Cold was able to sell that way, and again, me knowing, obviously looking back at it now, I know he was okay.
Right.
I'm just like, dude, that's an incredible performance as a whole to draw everybody, and that's when everybody started cheering Stone Cold, and that was the only chant that I heard throughout the entire match.
Exactly, right. And the thing for me too is, though, like, I was a kid, so like when I was watching it back then, I thought it was real, right? Because I feel like back then, when Booker and those guys were wrestling back then in the late 80s and 90s, wrestling looked a lot more real than it does now. Like, there are things where you're just like, I know that's not a thing.
Yeah.
Right? Whereas this, like, all they're doing is punching and kicking each other, throwing each other into objects, and he's cut open, right? And then obviously he takes the ring bell in the head too, right? And it's just like, all of those things put together is like, you know what, if I took all of that, I don't think I'd be standing up either. You know what I mean? And it was just like so real in the sense of the way that they walked through that match, that like it made complete sense that after he started bleeding and the amount of time they were into the match, that it's like, well, he's probably tired anyways, but on top of that, now he's leaking. Right. And I just love the way that he was selling, and I love that you brought that up, because the reality of the situation was like, he tried to cover as much of that arena with his blood as he possibly could.
The mat was covered after the match was over.
Right. And then thinking about the next match that's got to go in there, not like they changed the mat after the match, right?
They couldn't back then.
Exactly, right? And so, you know, but he was just like, he goes on the steel steps, bleeding all over the top step, right? Obviously, when he was first laying on the mat after Bret cut him open, he's bleeding all over the mat, right? And then they pick him up and go all the way to the other side and roll him in the ring, and then literally just like a pile, like 2.5 feet wide, of just him laying in his own blood, right? And it's just like, it's such an amazing aesthetic. And then obviously that final frame that you talked about, the iconic, you know, and obviously Steve talks about how that made him feel and why he did it. Obviously, like, I think that's still to this day just another reason why this match is as iconic as it is, because that's like one of the most iconic photos of literally all time.
Yeah.
Right. And I think that makes it special too. Right. And that just that just speaks to how good Steve Austin was. Right. Because like not everybody would have done that. You know what I mean? And so I love that you brought that up because it makes total sense. I thought the same thing when I saw it too.
Talking about that shot, that specific shot was really cool to just see flourish because I've seen it in the video packages. Don't try this at home and all that stuff, And I've always seen that, and I'm like, oh, okay, that's a crazy black and white shot that they're showing on TV, but I don't know where it's from because I'm like a 12, 13-year-old kid watching SmackDown on UPN 20 here in Houston.
Yeah.
And I'm just like, oh, okay, well, I guess I'm not going to try that at home because that looks scary, whatever. And it was really cool to see it flourish because I knew it was coming. I knew what was going to happen.
Yeah.
I knew the sharpshooter was going to get locked and he was going to pass out.
Right.
But, watching older Bret Hart matches now that I'm starting to get a little bit more into this, I've seen people get locked into the sharpshooter and instantly tap out, like immediately. The fact that he was able to hang on, we have those moments now where, like John Cena's STFU, that one at first maybe made you tap out within like 5-10 seconds or whatever. Sure. And then other, what I'm trying to think of like other submission, the master lock, right?
Yeah.
That one, eventually people passed out, but it was like after like 10-15 seconds or whatever.
Yeah.
I've never seen people instantly tap to a sharpshooter unless it was to Bret Hart.
Yeah.
Like in literal seconds. And to see Stone Cold hang on for as long as he did after the damage that he had gotten, after all the leg stuff that Bret Hart had done to weaken him and everything, with the bloody face and everything.
Yeah.
I really wish one day I could like maybe find an interview or maybe even get to talk to Stone Cold about this.
Yeah.
But I'm very curious with how much he was thinking about the television side of things.
Right.
Because, that's something that we get taught here at Reality Wrestling. Always look for the camera, right?
Yeah, right.
I wonder if he looked for the camera because he knew he was going to get that shot.
Yeah.
Or it was the cameraman that was like, I'm going to get this shot. Or maybe it was just, like it was planned. Because now you can kind of tell when something's going to happen because the camera angle changes and stuff. And you can see the camera people. And if you're WWE coded like I am,
right,
you can always kind of figure out where stuff's going to happen.
Exactly.
And I think that's why my wife doesn't like wrestling because she can tell all that stuff. But
feels a little more choreographed than it's supposed to be.
Yeah. And I've shown her some old stuff and she's like, this is incredible. I was like, I knew you liked wrestling. I knew you did.
Well, because it just feels more real.
Yeah, exactly.
Right.
And that's her thing. It's hokey.
Yeah.
But like I really want to know the story of how that shot came to be.
Yeah.
Because obviously, again, like now I don't want to say we choreograph these things, but we know what's coming. They have producers like, hey, we're about to have this shot. I watched the WWE Unreal documentary and I thought that was really cool.
Right.
That you see Chris Park Abyss just talking like, hey, we're about to get this shot. Make sure to get the cameras right here and everything.
Yeah.
This person's about to come out. I'm like, I love that because I see that happen here too.
Yeah.
And I hear Kevin all the time. I was like, hey, camera 2, make sure you get this shot because somebody's about to come down and hit music. And then boom, it happens.
Right.
I want to know how this match was put together kind of because I love the production aspect to it.
Absolutely.
The storytelling production coming together is phenomenal.
Right.
And it's going to be like the biggest like I get white whale moment, I guess is what I'm calling it.
Sure.
The biggest white whale for my career. Like, again, I don't know if I'm ever going to
know if
it was planned.
Yeah.
If it was like, beforehand or even if he didn't know he was going to blade, if he was going to or I don't know if he knew he was going to bleed. I don't know any of this stuff.
Right.
But I want to know.
Yeah.
Because that's just, to me, that's like a cherry on top of like, the fact that you planned this.
Yeah.
And it came out perfect.
Right.
Because I've seen that happen here at Raw. They're like, hey, we have this planned.
Yeah.
We want to make sure this happens.
Yeah.
When the camera crew comes together, the director comes through, the commentary comes through, moments are amazing.
Exactly.
And I'm going to give myself flowers here because I like putting myself over. I like to think that Will Alday's first Raw title win was perfection because the moment was there.
Yeah.
The commentary was great. The moment with the fans was fantastic, and everything just came together.
Right.
That's probably the last massive Raw title win that I witnessed here, aside from Zilla Fatu.
Right.
And that was like 6 years ago, I think now, maybe like 5-6 years ago or so.
Right.
So I think it's just cool when everything comes together and that moment stands the test of time.
Yeah.
Because it was so well put together.
Right. And I think that more so if it did come out at some point and we've just missed that interview, or if it doesn't come out and they just did that organically, that just speaks to the skill and the talent of not just Stone Cold, but obviously the production team in general. I know that Stone Cold had talked about putting himself in that position, but it's not the same as it is now, because obviously they're telling you about where the cameras are, and the ref's coming over and saying, hey, camera's about to be here, there, this way, that way. Whereas Ken's not wearing a headpiece, right?
Again,
like he's not coming. He's not going over to Steve. He's down and he's going, "Do you give up? Do you give up?" And that's the only thing he's saying. And you can literally hear him audibly asking him, "Are you giving up?" So you know that he's not telling him about what's about to happen.
Yeah.
And Steve had said that, like, I pushed myself up into that position, and like, I think that just, again, it just adds another layer to the story, because you talked about the sharpshooter and how everybody that gets put into it taps out immediately, and then he just keeps sitting there, and then he almost gets out of it.
Yeah, that was the next part of my notes.
He's the only guy to, like, break the hold like that, almost get out of it, and you think that the match is going to keep going, and then obviously Bret sits back up and then he passes out, right? But like, that whole selection of the way that they move that for the shot, I think that if Steve hadn't planned it and the camera crew is just where they needed to be, I think that just proves even more why Steve is who he is. Right.
I mean, he's a legend for a reason.
Absolutely.
He's like the legend for a reason.
Right.
When I know I brought up my wife earlier, and I love telling the story to people because it's just a hilarious story. When I met her, I told her that professional wrestling was my life. And she was like, what do you mean professional wrestling? I was like, you've never watched professional wrestling? And she's like, I don't know what that is. I was like, do you know The Rock? She's like, the actor? And I was like, what?
No!
And I told her Stone Cold. She's like, I don't know who that is. So I was like, this is amazing. I can mold your brain.
Right.
So again, watching all these old matches, because obviously those are the two names that everybody knows, Stone Cold and The Rock.
Yeah.
And so I like talking about them in a sense of like connecting with people, but I've never seen their work.
Yeah.
For lack of a better explanation, I've never seen their work. Like you talk about Stone Cold being technical and then turning into a brawler after this, and being the star that he is. Yeah. I've seen the moments, I've seen the clips and everything, but I've never seen matches that made them who they are.
Exactly. Yeah.
So to see this match just be put together the way that it was sensational. That shot again was incredible.
Yeah.
Bret Hart was phenomenal. Him breaking the sharpshooter and commentary selling it was fantastic, because I was like, oh snap, and I knew the double turn was coming, or that it was happening as I was witnessing it and everything.
Exactly.
But that's like the ultimate babyface, like fuck you type shit. That is like, I'm not gonna tap.
Yeah, I didn't quit.
You.
Yeah, fuck
and,
you.
Cody Rhodes did the same thing with Brock Lesnar when they did that Kimura spot and everything later on. I even promised Braxton did that with Natty when she was here.
Yeah.
So it's that ultimate defiance of like, I'm not gonna let you beat me. I'm just going to go out on my shield.
Exactly.
And it's just a really cool thing when built up properly.
Yeah.
And I think that, this, the final thing I have in my notes here is like, this is the epitome of winning in defeat.
Yeah.
Which is something that, Booker always tells us too. Like, you got to make your losses look just as good as your wins.
Exactly.
Because, you got to still, everybody loses eventually.
Yeah.
Everybody always gets cracked eventually. To go undefeated is impossible.
Yeah.
And there's maybe 2-3 boxers that have done that, I think, in history. And one of them's like Floyd Mayweather or whatever, even though I think that's kind of But that's my hot take. That's my hot take right there.
That's the asterisk. Yeah, when you get to pick your opponents. That's all we're saying, Floyd. That's all we're saying, buddy.
Hey, at least I can read. This is the epitome of winning in defeat, right?
Right.
And I think that's what I took most out of this. Just again, seeing the match, more so than just the matches, getting to that moment where I knew that they were going to turn. Bret Hart was going to walk out of heel. Stone Cold was going to walk out of face.
Yeah.
The fact that, again, Booker always drills that into our brain, like, make your losses count.
Yes.
This was the biggest count of a loss that I've ever seen, because obviously you talk about this being the launching point for the Attitude Era. It was just like, in retrospect, we can look at it in a different way.
Yeah.
But this was one of the most incredible matches as a storytelling standpoint with professional wrestling cultural impact that I've ever seen so far on the show.
Yeah.
So it was really cool to, see it transpire.
Exactly. No, and I mean, like, the thing is too, is this, like, it's always, because people, like, we talk about the double turn and people forget a lot of the time, because I've talked to people about this match before, that people forget, like I said, we brought it up earlier, that Shamrock was a part of this match, and Bret starts beating up Steve afterwards. And the crowd is like confused, because they're just like, the match is over and Bret's never done that before. And then the thing that I think is like the added flavor that really helped that double turn along is Ken body pressing Bret afterwards, because Bret wouldn't get off Steve.
Yeah.
Right. And like, that added another layer, because as soon as he did that, and then Bret didn't go back and he left, that's when everybody started booing him. Right. And then you can see as he's going back towards the entrance, people are flipping him off and he's flipping people off. And like, there are people, like, you see their faces and you can see, like, number one, there are people that are pissed off. And then there are people that are confused. Right. And then there are people that like still love Bret Hart, but they're really not sure. Like, what did I just watch? Because Bret's never done that before. Right. And then obviously the next thing is, you know, Steve goes to get out and everybody starts chanting his name. And you're just like, you know, obviously when I was, you know, 5.5 at the time. Well, no, I would have been 6. That's a lie. I would have been 5. But I remember watching it because it's actually one of my earliest wrestling memories, actually. And just not knowing at that time how monumental that moment is going to be for the rest of time. Yeah. And the fact that I watched it on TV is crazy, right? And there's so many things about not just the match, but the men in the match. All 3 of them, really, in some type of capacity that just defined what it is for that thing to exist, right? Like Ken Shamrock, you know, obviously Mark Kerr started UFC, but Ken Shamrock going to WWE is what made it pop culture. And literally that's why UFC is the way that it is, because Ken was that larger than life guy that made that happen, and then people started really watching combat sports, right? And then Bret Hart makes Steve Austin, Bret does his thing, Steve does his thing, Attitude Era, we're off and running, right? And so it's a special moment, and like you said, like, I don't really think there are a lot of moments in general where you can pick at that, even when you look back on moments and go, that was as influential as almost any other moments that exist in wrestling. And so that's the thing that I love most about it. And obviously, you know, just like I tell everybody, there aren't a lot of Canadians in this world, but the Canadians that do exist, we always make an impact. So
that's really cool. Again, just Bret Hart being the influential being that he is, and Stone Cold being the person that he is. It was really cool, again, watching this matchup and just, again, seeing the cultural impact that it had on a lot of people. And you're telling me Chad Poutine was basically born that day.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, pretty much. Yep.
No, that's the thank you for, you know, bringing this matchup to my list and stuff, because again, I've learned so much already about a lot of the previous matches that I've seen and everything.
Right.
This is my first WWE match that I've actually covered on this show.
Oh, okay.
Because I did WCW, and then I did 2 Japan matches. I did ECW, and so this is the first actual WWE match that I've watched. And for me being WWE coded, I was like, I'm gonna look for the things that I know, like how commentary talks, how the camera is built, like you know, the production stuff to it. Yeah. But just seeing it, that, you know, the style was just different, a lot simpler. It was really cool to come back to it and start with Bret Hart, because you know, that's WrestleMania 26. That's like not even a Bret Hart match. We're not even going to call it that. But
that wasn't peak Bret Hart. That's for sure.
Exactly. So to see peak Bret Hart was really cool in action. And again, the next episode is going to be about Bret Hart as well.
Yeah,
so
which is awesome. And I think that, like, the one thing that I was actually thinking about watching the match is it's just kind of funny how, like, obviously back then Vince McMahon was the head commentator.
Yeah.
And it's just funny to think that not that long after this, he does his thing with Bret.
And Mr. McMahon is born.
And then he does his thing with Steve. I think that makes this even more special. And it's just coming to me now that, like, those are 3 people that Stone Cold made. Because without Stone Cold, there is no Mr. McMahon, right? Because you needed somebody to kick the piss out of your boss.
Yeah.
Right? And I don't think anybody else could have done what they did other than Steve.
Yeah.
Right? And it's just crazy to think that, like, you know, he's just commentating like he's a regular dude, right? And then along comes the screw job less than a year later, right? And then we get rid of Bret, and then directly to Steve Austin. Like, it's just crazy how, more than any other match I can think of back then, that, like, so much intertwined to just make complete and utter greatness in so many different aspects of the business, I think is what makes this match so special. I know it was number 2 on the 50 greatest matches, but, like, I disagree. I'm sure WrestleMania 25 was legendary, but I would have made this match. I firmly believe it's the best match I've ever watched in my life.
I mean, now I think WrestleMania 40 kind of tops it, but that's just me. I was there for 25, but 40 was pretty incredible to see unfold. But that's recency bias. I will admit. I will admit that's recency bias.
Because 40 came after 25?
Exactly. Well, Chad, thank you so much for joining me here on this.
Absolutely.
I hope you had a blast talking about this matchup, because I know I sure did.
Appreciate it.
I very much, I'm enjoying this, retrospective, and I know it's like the name of the show or whatever, but I'm enjoying talking to different people with different perspectives, different backgrounds. I've talked to producers, I've talked to wrestlers, people that wanted to be managers, people that are now consultants and stuff like that. So, to kind of get different perspectives, because you're actually the first foreign person I've had on here, because, there you go.
Because Americans love foreigners, right, guys?
Exactly. I mean, I'm a foreigner, but it's really cool that I'm getting, all these different perspectives, because the one thing that I've always liked about wrestling is that I tell like all my people outside of here all the time, like, here we are like the normal ones, because on the outside world, we're the weird ones. Like, oh, you like wrestling? Oh, that's weird. Here we're like, yeah, we all like wrestling. It's like, oh, I like horror movies. I was like, that's weird. Like that's, it's the complete reverse of everything out there. So if it wasn't for professional wrestling, maybe our paths wouldn't have ever crossed. You never know.
No, and so you're 100% right. And I agree with you 100%, but I also make fun of people all the time for it, because the reality of it is there are a lot of people that are closet wrestling fans.
Oh yeah.
They don't want to admit it, but like, guys, let's be real. Wrestling is a male soap opera. You want to know some of the most popular shows on television? They're soap operas. Yeah. You know what I mean?
We Avatar fans and professional wrestling fans are some of the most closeted people out there, because there's no way Avatar keeps making the money that it does and keeps making sequels.
Exactly.
And nobody's like, oh yeah, I'm an Avatar fan. It's like,
everybody hates Avatar, but then all of a sudden they gross the biggest box office of all time.
Exactly.
It's like somebody's lying, and it's not just you.
Exactly.
And you.
Alrighty. So as we wrap this up, I like to ask people here at the end what they would rate this on their own personal 5-star scale. So where would you put this matchup?
Oh, easily 5 out of 5.
5.
10 out of 5, 15 out of 5, you name it. It's honestly, there isn't anything about this match that doesn't check a box that is everything that professional wrestling is supposed to be about.
Hell yeah.
Right.
So, I mean, funny enough, hell yeah, Stone Cold. But yeah, I'm longing for the day where somebody's like, oh, 0 stars. And they absolutely mean it. Because I've had everybody, obviously, right now we're getting started, right? So everybody's going to let me show you my favorite match. I'm like, all right, cool. So all of them are going to be 5 stars.
Yeah.
The one previous actually was 4 stars.
Oh,
and
interesting.
There was a reason behind it. I know you haven't heard it yet, but maybe you'll hear it here when it releases tomorrow. Right. But I'm waiting for the day where somebody's like, let me show you slop. I want to show you like the absolute slop. I'm like,
I mean,
hit me with it.
Chad would be more than happy to show you some slop and give you a 0 out of 5. But let's get some of the greatest matches out of the way first, and then we can show people what professional wrestling is not.
Hell yeah. Alrighty. Well, thank you so much for joining me here today, man. As always, I always welcome everybody back once, we get things rolling and whatnot, because there's a lot of matches out there that I haven't seen. And I want to eventually work my way through them. But thank you so much for your time.
No, not a problem.
Do you have anything that you would like to plug before we get out of here?
No, 100%. Just hit the follow button. Instagram, X, TikTok, Facebook, The Real Poutine, spelled like poutine, as well as I'll be up in St. Paul, Minnesota, October 31st this month, and then November 1st, Grand Slam 8. I will be competing in the Innovation Championship Battle Royal, where I'll be walking away with another belt. So I'll add more metal, and I'll take it home to Canada where it belongs. So
watch out, Mercedes Moné. He's coming for you. Alrighty. Well, thank you so much for joining me, man. This has been Kirby Carreon for the Miss Retrospective, and we'll see you on the next one.